Howdy, Keith Stone here again with another short update for the Duna Permanent Outpost Mission Architecture Challenge. Certainly a mouthful. Definitely, for those of you who don't know, and I'm not sure how many of you, I know at least one of you out there is viewing this channel without having much of an idea of what's going on here, and so I welcome you, good friend. And for the rest of you who already know and participate in this challenge, congratulations. If you don't participate in this challenge and have Kerbal Space Program, I highly recommend going over the challenge forum. It's been on the first page of the challenge forum for quite a while now. It is posted by, and I apologize if I butcher your name, Strumsteiger, or Strumsteiger, maybe? Anyway. So, for those of you who don't know, it is a challenge to establish a permanent base on the Kerbal equivalent of Mars, which is called Duna. It's not just a challenge to establish a base, but to complete a complete mission architecture, including limits to your launch vehicle, which you guys saw in the pre-launch episode, as well as planning out how long your Kerbals are going to stay on Duna, which they can stay up to, I believe, 1,000 days, and establish, transport back and forth, supply rules. It's a pretty well thought out and pretty in-depth challenge, and I really appreciate it. So, just to take a look here, this is the Kerbin, and our orbit here, and here is the Mars-like red planet of Duna, which is our target. We need to achieve a landed base of at least, I believe it's 4 Kerbals on Duna by day 500. That includes all of your launches, all of your flight time, and everything. I am going to be landing 8 Kerbals on Duna, and I'm still debating and doing a little bit of math on whether or not I'm going to leave a 9th Kerbal on the space station that I'll be placing around Duna. To see, and probably have a small rotation of who goes up to the space station every now and again. Or if I'll just stick with 8 and maybe leave 6 on the planet and possibly 2 in the space station. I'm going to double check the rules on long-term crewed missions and how many of them have to be there for them to stay sane. So, back to Kerbin here. I'll go ahead and do a little bit of pre-mission overview. I did have some difficulty in not properly calculating the delta V required to do kind of the first ongoing portion of my mission, which is a few back and forth trips to the moon to mine kethane for fuel, or kethane, depending on who you are. So I did go back and luckily had enough space in some of my other launches that I was launching empty, that I should be able to fill up partially the first couple of launches with a little bit of fuel to be able to get my kethane miner to the moon and back. And once I get one trip landed on the moon, I will be able to then begin fueling up all of the various platforms and prepare them for a launch straight to Duna. So one of the first things that I'm going to do here is I'm going to launch what I call the Duna timer, which is just a tiny little rover here, horribly thin, with a couple of weather monitoring and pressure monitoring systems on it here, a little antenna to communicate with, since apparently all of my Kerbals are agoraphobic and do not want to go outside to give me any information about what's going on. This little guy will act as kind of an outdoor weather station, and will also allow me, the more important thing, the more game-changing thing, is that it'll allow me to accelerate time in positions where I would not normally be able to do any kind of time acceleration. I've also gone ahead and set up a few of my launch windows. I have not set up all of them. I need to go back and change some of that. So here we go. I gotta get this guy turned around here. He's currently moving a little backwards, and he's very lightweight. I'm going to turn off the torque here. There we go. And hopefully I don't totally crash him. I'm just going to set him over here next to the VAB, just off the launch platform. Should be good enough. And then I will do a brief overview of the first couple of launches that I will be doing. Let's put on some brakes here, get him nice and stopped. And we'll go ahead and set up his little radio antenna there. Ah, yes, beautiful. And let's get some readings. Pressure, 0.98. Temperature, toggle that. Alright, 1954, not bad. It's a nice day out. So, with that, and we are, see here on year 1, day 1, so I'm not doing any kind of funky time skips or anything. We'll go back to the Space Center, and we'll be back in the VAB for a little bit. So, I've changed, like I said, my flight plan slightly. I will try to update that and post it on the website. I'm not really changing it significantly enough to really warrant me caring too terribly much about the reordering of my launches, since all of the first 7 launches up to day 500 are still pretty much the same. Instead, I will be launching the crew landers first, since they have the most room for additional fuel. Since the upper portion technically weighs 40 tons between the two when it's full of fuel, but that means I only have to remove 10 tons of fuel, and I'm still left with somewhere in the range of, let's see, 500 liquid fuel and about 650 oxidizer, which doesn't quite balance out perfectly, but I didn't really feel like going through and crunching all the numbers because I only needed about 300, 400 meters per second difference in the Cathane landing module, the Cathane mining module anyway. So between the fuel that I'm leaving in here and a very tiny bit of fuel is being left in the nuclear engines, since they have a pretty high ISP, and since they have their own propulsion facing in a decent direction, I can actually overfuel them just a smidge. I think I put them about 31 tons, and am going to be using their higher ISP and better fuel consumption to bring a little bit of extra fuel up as well. So instead of launching the Cathane miner first, followed by the engines, followed by these, I'll be launching these first, followed by the engines, which will dock with them, and then one of the engines will stay behind, docked to them, so that I can keep everything together in one spot. And then I will launch the Cathane mining platform up to dock with the engine and head off for the moon. And if that doesn't, I mean, that really should do it. But if I do not have the Delta V to do a good, solid moon landing at that point, I do also have the command module that I can throw up. And I believe it has a full standard Ares tank on it. Or A's. Ares is just easier to say. I don't know. It has... which one does it have? I think it has this one. So yeah, I can bring up another 360 and 400 that I can drain off of it. And then if I don't have the Delta V's at that point, which there's no reason that I shouldn't, then I'll probably just abort this as a challenge and walk away sadly. But I will still continue it as a video series. I just will not be abiding by all of the rules, and I will probably redesign my launcher some, or at that point be able to do extra launches of fuel tanks to be able to support the mission more robustly. I'm already at the point in design in this mission where I probably, you know, the thing I should do is actually redesign some pieces and maybe send up some extra fuel. Instead, I'm sticking to my guns and to my mission plan, except for a little bit of the order, and just gonna kind of get this guy going. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna set back up the launch here and finish editing my first 2 launch windows. Okay, so we are back, and this time sans additional Kerbals. Getting ready for launch. I have all of my additional launch windows up through 7 and my first transfer all placed in spot. So now we're going to do a little bit of time warping, and then I will briefly document some of the launch and be back for launch number 2. Alright, so here we are, year 1, day 10. For any of you who may have noticed, yes, my alarms were slightly incorrect, and shortly after cutting this video down, I got to the end of day 1, at which my first alarm buzzed me, trying to let me know that it was time for launch. When it wasn't! It was a liar. But here we are, year 1, day 10. Delete this alarm. Engage autopilot on MechJeb. Maybe someday I will show you guys a few flights when I become a little bit more in tune to getting the Xbox controller hooked back up. I would prefer to get a wireless adapter and be able to use some of the other Xbox controllers instead of the corded off-brand one that I have. So yeah, we'll go ahead and take this guy up and get him into a circularized orbit, and I'll probably just go ahead and show a few launches here in a row. Okay, so it was a little bit rough getting up this time. We barely have enough fuel left here. But we now have made it into a stable 125 kilometer orbit around Kerbin. There we are. We're going to go ahead and hope that this has enough fuel to deorbit itself. We're going to just nudge that top platform off. There we go. And nudge it a little bit more. Maybe? Nope. Yay! Okay. Now we, of course, don't want to set it on fire. There we go. We'll just move away from it. And we want to keep space somewhat tidy, but I don't know that I'm actually... The launch vehicle varies, especially under MechJeb, as far as if it has enough delta Vs to deorbit itself. It always has enough to get to orbit, which I suppose is the most important bit. Yeah, that's not enough to do it. Well, maybe. What's the map say? Oh, nope, that's gonna deorbit it. Alright, great. We'll let this bit burn up in the atmosphere, since we do not want it cluttering space. And we'll go back for another launch. Alright, so here we are preparing to launch the engine pair. These are able to work both as a pair of engines for the Caladrius space station / colony ship that will be the first colony ship to deliver Kerbals to Duna. They can also function independently, and will be functioning independently, on return journeys back from Duna, as to be able to act as engines for the other various ships and cargoes that I'll be sending back, since I will need more than just the 2 engines. They'll also act as the primary engine for the Mooner Kethane mining vehicle. I'm going to go ahead and edit the fuel down here to bring the weight down to about 33. And I know that these don't balance... Oh, I didn't hit the OK button. These don't balance exactly the way they should as far as percentage of liquid fuel to oxidizer. But like I said before, I'm only looking for like 300 extra delta V on the Kethane miner for its first trip to the moon. Once it's full of Kethane and filling up these engines, then I'm going to have no trouble moving fuel and Kethane back and forth and fueling up the various ships. In fact, I might do that. I might end up bringing over the crew vessels to the moon as well, so instead of the Kethane miner moving back and forth, I will just be moving the engine pair, or actually the Kethane vehicle down to the moon and back up, and not have to bring it all the way back to Kerbin and worry about that. I can just dock the whole thing and transfer fuel back and forth. We'll see how I feel and how long the trip actually takes to get there. So, first thing, we need to wait for day 55. You see it's day 11, 43 days from now, so... I don't know. They get a quick seizure warning here, as we're going to be speeding up the time acceleration. I don't know how much of it is intentional or just the way the clocks work, but it does kind of irritate me that the day and night cycle, you get like 3, 4, sometimes 5 day-night cycles for an actual day. And I'm not sure if that's just a difference between real time and accelerated time, or if that's if Kerbin just has several day and night cycles for every one of their days. I'm not sure how Kerbals define today. I haven't gone out and really researched anything. I don't really... I'm not that worried about it, keeping in a canon or anything like that. And, so... Once this gets to... We're not actually going to launch on day 55, which is the first moment that this vehicle is technically considered constructed, prepped, and ready. It's kind of a shame you can't watch Kerbals run back and forth to bring pieces in, or move the vehicle out very, very, very slowly down this launch ramp. That would be pretty cool. So, instead, what we're going to do, again, since I'm a terrible pilot, actually, that's really, really close. We're going to launch into a direct rendezvous with the crew landers, and that will allow us to dock, transfer fuel in, transfer all of the fuel from both of these into this bottom engine, and the bottom engine will be ready to undock and dock onto the Kethane miner for its first voyage to the moon. And the Kethane miner will go ahead and be launch number 3. So here we are, day 55. Am I ready to launch? Is it awaiting launch? It looks like it's a little bit off. It's been a minute since I've launched into a rendezvous, so... And I don't have a timer. Since I have, 35 days between launches, and I was talking through that, yeah, I think it was actually ready to launch. I wasn't paying any attention to the T- window here, and so I'm just going to go ahead and engage the autopilot. There we go. Now it'll tell me that it's waiting for launch once it gets there. Silly me. So we're going to go ahead and launch this, and then once we launch, I will, 2, 1... See you guys. Probably going to go ahead and run a little bit of the docking, since that tends to get a little bit fiddly, and then I'll bring this video stuff back up when we are docked and transferring fuel. So here's what I mean about having the extra Delta V in this ship. It just barely... Whew! I have had in the past several troubles with keeping this ship from pivoting a complete 180. There's a chance it might happen again here. I'm going to try to control it from that point. If it does, I've actually gotten pretty good, instead of, flying it myself like I should, at disengaging the autopilot, letting it go, about 270 degrees, and then engaging it so that it can jet back into position. Like I said, I can pilot these myself, but up. Are we going to 180? Are we going to 180? Yep, I'm pretty sure we're about to pass over the top here. Nope, get back over. Get back over. I have no idea what causes this yet. I don't know if it's a function of MechJeb or just the new ASAS. I'm actually trying to give it a little bit of manual input here as well. Wow. We hit apoaps real quick. We're going to have a huge Delta V margin for the circularization. That's great. I do really enjoy, I know I haven't kind of shown it off, I guess you get to see it there, that this decoupler is actually one of those stack separators. When I was constructing the launch vehicle, I wasn't really concerned about what decoupler I used. I didn't realize how big of an explosion they used, and I actually have some plans to have a little bit of fun with those in the future. Way in the future, actually. Let's see, we got 13, we need 15, so yeah, that's about right for the weight of these. I'm going to go ahead and transfer the fuel that I have up here, down here, just in case it needs to be there anyway. I kept them distributed for weight of the initial launch, but now that they're up in essentially, I wouldn't say deep space, but deep orbit, suborbit, then we can shift the weight back and kind of centralize it a little bit. I was worried having it all in one spot could cause, one end or the other to have too much wobble during launch, which apparently we already had too much wobble to begin with. It wasn't the most well planned out launcher. It definitely is a decent launcher for getting some 30-ton weights. I had some issues in The only thing that I should have done between massive save wipes on various attempts at this challenge is that I should have at least kept my launch platform. Even though the first one was a 50, the last two were 30s. So I probably should have kept those. That way, I got really frustrated by the time I was building another launch vehicle, since most of the fun was kind of building the stuff that goes on top of it. So, yeah, anyway, I will be back once I've fiddled my way into a pretty close docking position and can get docked without too much terrible trouble, because you guys don't want to watch me spend 30 minutes wasting ridiculous amounts of monopropellant and wiggling back and forth, because none of these vehicles are very well RCS balanced. I have not gotten the RCS balancing mod. I know that when 2.1 first came out, it was totally broken. I don't know if it's fixed yet. I haven't really checked because I don't normally do a bunch of docking. It probably would have been great if I would have balanced all of these, but instead I just kind of roughed my way through it the best I can. I'm sure plenty of you out there have had terribly RCS balanced ships. They're close. They're not perfect. So, oh, that's right. This has to be activated on its own. There we go. And we'll pop those off. Pew! Alright, so I'll be back at close to the end of docking. Okay, so here we are, terribly close and yet terribly far away. Trying to dock. That causing too much trouble or spin. Come on. I of course probably should have the laser cam system or any of those other wonderful mods, but unfortunately I kind of have too many mods as it is. And though I could use some definite assistance, or at least my flight stick / Xbox controller, I might be able to get just enough. All I gotta do is get them to just touch a little bit in just the right direction. Always easier said than done. And of course pay attention to the nav ball and not the screen, because the screen is an upside down lie about what direction I'm facing, and I keep doing it. I keep looking at the screen. I really am going to run out of monopropellant here if I'm not careful. Again, looking at the screen when I shouldn't. I also probably should have put the lighter RCS thrusters on. Let me see if I can get MechJeb in close enough here that it can just boink. I don't like using the MechJeb for docking too much because it is a horrible, horrible waste of RCS, and when it does get lined up, it tends to just drift away and needs some help. Nope. See, needs to line up again. Ah, this is gonna kill me. I'm out of RCS. So now I'm gonna have to try to do this with just the engine, which is, oh, this is gonna be so bad. Actually, no, the ships have RCS. Okay, so I merely need to stop, because they don't really, they do have engines, but it would be really bad to try to fly them with the engines. So I just need to get, speaking of these, as in the crew landers have RCS left on them. They actually have quite a bit more RCS than the engine pair does, which would have been smart to think about using in the first place. But that's okay, so all I have to do is try really, really hard to stop moving away. Oh god, this is super bad. No. Alright, so I'm moving away at a very quick pace. No RCS on the other engine. So I have one engine. Which one has more fuel in it? Did I transfer? I did transfer all of the fuel, didn't I? So this one has 0 fuel in it. Or rather, yeah, this one has 0 fuel. Alright, so this one has fuel. And is moving way too quickly away from the target. Okay. Well, already off to a wonderful start. I have inadvertently hit the spacebar and separated my engines. Alright, not the ascent guidance. Oh, this is what I get for never flying and always engineering. That is actually moving away from me. I need it to not move away from me. Oh, goodness. Like I said, at least I have quite a bit more oxidizer. Actually, I need to... These are not technically oxidizer. Boop. Those are supplies. So, I'm really not sure how this is going to work out, but I know it's going to take a while. So, I'll come back when we're hopefully back being too close to docking. Adventures! It wouldn't be Kerbal if there wasn't plenty of screw-ups. Okay, so a lot of drifting later. Lots of just very slow drifting through space because I didn't want to use the engines on this, and I didn't want to be in an odd direction trying to use the engines on these. I think we're decently lined up. And still have a fair bit of monopropellant left. Now, if we can just get docked here, then we can go ahead and get some monopropellant into the engines here. In the single engine, rather. I was hoping to carry both engines over. Come on, come on. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. And of course I'm hitting buttons when I don't have RCS turned on. But we're docked. Oh my goodness. Okay. So, fuel goes in. Yes. Delta V map comes up. Since this is already about, well, be closer to 20 tons when it's done, but... In. Alright, 1604, that's looking to be a lot better. See, if I were smart, I probably would have gone ahead and put a docking port up here too, because I realized that the Kethane miner has an engine on the bottom, and therefore cannot be dragged to the moon with these landers attached. See, Kerbals aren't planning things out very well. Engineered a lot of really cool stuff, and put it all together in one big giant thing, did not figure out how it was going to work better as these smaller bits, and now that we're already 45 days in, that's, and disconnected from our other engine, which hopefully, double check here, make sure it's not gonna, yeah, it's on a stable orbit, but, we're gonna have to pick that up at some point. So, who knows, maybe this engine can go, once it's fueled up from the moon, return back to Kerbin, pick up the other engine, bring it back, I don't know. We'll do some juggling and see what happens. So yeah, I guess the next thing we need now is the Kethane scanner and miner, and we need to get to the moon. We are on a slightly inclined orbit, which is awesome, but it's not very awesome. I might try to zero that out, but I don't have a lot of fuel to do it with. So, until next time, we'll play with the Kethane miner and the moon mission.